to another evening of Magisterra Soloists Online Fundraising Week. We are really excited to be here at the museum. For now, I would like you to introduce our special guest. Katerina Juraskova is one of our newest roster musicians for Magisterra. Roster musician basically means we have formed the group in such a way that we don't have members, we have musicians that we call on a roster, and that changes on a yearly basis. So, Katerina, welcome. You have been
Thank you.
You have been one of the first. You played your first concert with us in our last concert before COVID hit, February 27.
Yes, and I remember that experience very well. One of my best times with new friends, musicians that I can recall to date, and it was the last one in person for me too. Little did we know that that will
2 weeks later, right?
2 weeks later, everything will shut down, and so it is just with just incredible joy that we have a concert coming. That you already had one in September, but this is going to be my first one live after 6 months of playing online, and this is just such a joy for a musician to be able to connect with the audience in the same room again. And actually, before Corona, we didn't even know how privileged we were to be in one room with people, and we took it for granted. And now it's coming back, and it feels just like a celebration, being back with fellow people and a fellow audience again. And this is a new audience for me, and I know it was a very warm one in February. I look forward to playing
concert there
next Thursday, right?
Yeah. So I would like to think that you moved here because of Magisterra, which of course I don't think we can take credit for that. I would like to. So tell us about that. So you just moved here from the States 2 months ago. Barely 2 months ago.
2 months ago, and it was a mad rush to leave Montgomery, Alabama, with a 6-year-old, and my husband, and you, Anata, you played a huge role in that, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for that extra push, because it's hard to say. One thing is to plan, wouldn't it be nice to go to a safe country, and the next time it's like, it's actually happening, so let's put the house on market, let's just cut all the ties to Alabama and let's go. And it was during Corona. It's moving during Corona is not, look, that was not fun, but we did it.
A whole other experience,
right? A whole other
right?
experience, driving 4 days through United States, trying to keep safe, and finally arriving here and settling down. And so it's been a challenge, but it was a very joyful challenge, if one can see it that way. And I'm glad to be back in Canada. I lived in Montreal for more than 10 years. That was 13 years ago, so somewhat my second coming back to Canada, and I look forward to being on the roster of Magisterra for this season. We have some fabulous concerts to come. I can't wait.
Tell us a little bit about your musical upbringing. So you grew up in the Czech Republic,
yes.
And I guess, I grew up in Germany, so we two different countries, and yet so many similarities that we share and through which we have connected in the last number of months. Right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that upbringing, and then what brought you, what path it took for you to end up in Montreal.
Goodness. Yes, it started with, I was born during the communist times. That was very interesting, and as a kid I was of course not aware of that, and you just go happy-go-lucky, and parents talk behind your back about things that you don't understand. So not much after my 18th birthday, the Velvet Revolution happened, and by then I got an offer to spend a year at the music academy, Menuhin Music Academy in Gstaad in Switzerland. And I went there for just a short time, and stayed almost 4 years, where I met a wonderful cellist, Antonio Lissi, who was at that time professor at McGill University. Unfortunately, the international fees were way above my budget, but luck had it that I found another wonderful teacher, Dennis Brott, who is in Montreal, and I went to the Conservatoire de Musique de Montréal and did 2 years there, then switched to McGill with Antonio Lissi as a permanent resident holder, and I had the opportunity to pay my own studies, which were really, of course, the fee was much less by then, as I was not an international student anymore, and did my doctorate at McGill. I played with McGill Chamber Orchestra, and I played with Angels du La Pieta for a year, and then got a position in Montgomery, Alabama, as the principal cellist with Montgomery Symphony Orchestra. And I thought I will be moving for 2 years, and my 2 years stretched into 13. And then my 13 years ended in our move back to Canada, and this is where I am now.
We are very happy to have you back here. And I can totally relate to the thought of you moved to a different country for like a year, maybe 2, and then 15 years later you're still here. So so this is exciting. And I personally, of course, you have seen that with the concert series and the last concert we played together. You know that Magisterra also kind of stands for bringing people from different cultures together, so this is perfect. My studio here at the university looks pretty international, and that kind of all ties in that how music is ultimately like an international language. I mean, we all understand each other when we make music. And again, something we cannot underestimate to have an existence in days like these right now. So in the programming, there is like, I'm looking for the right musicians, or for the musicians I have available, their strength and how to represent them best. I'm thinking, of course, a program that flows nicely and creates a nice menu from like the appetizer to the main dish to the dessert afterwards. And then, of course, I would like to usually have a certain masterpiece involved, but also introduce lesser known pieces to the audience. So you have been already part of a scenario like that. So another concert that's coming up that you're involved in is one in our Holocaust series that we have every year in January. Mm-hmm. Do you find that important with, again, being European background, does it make a difference for you in thinking about the importance of an event like that? To have it like a concert series that really promotes like forgotten musicians, or actually just makes us aware of, hey, there was this time and place in history that we should not forget about. Is that something you feel important?
I think it is, in a sense, that we all had, to a certain degree, things happening in our families. So not necessarily from my personal experience, but from my predecessors. And it's part of the history that we are bringing with us to the future. And I don't think that should be forgotten. We don't necessarily need to focus on it solely, but it's part of who we are. It's part of who we are, and it's part of the stories we heard at home. It's part, perhaps, of the stories we had of friends of ours who had that experience, or their parents or grandparents. And coming back to it is the same way we come to it. It's like a trip to the past, and the past is our past, especially when we come. I mean, how many people do not have grandmas, grandpas, great-grandparents who come from Europe, especially in Canada, right? So it's part of our heritage, and bringing it back on a regular basis, I think it's as important as going back to Beethoven's time and going back to Bach's time in different reasons. Just part of our, it's the treasure that we get to open again and share with the other people, just because we can play this music and we are. I think it's a wonderful idea to have that as a part of series on a regular basis.
Yeah, particularly with the Holocaust series, if I look back how it started, it didn't start as a series. It started as a one-time event which happened to coincide with the Death March, with the January date. So it's like, okay, this is a really meaningful date to have a concert like that. And it's turned out there's so much well, we're all aware of, there's so much repertoire from music from Theresienstadt. So the first 2 concerts, I think, were mainly dedicated to composers that did perish in the camps. And I think now we have been gravitating a little bit more to composers that were maybe not in a concentration camp, but were affected by the war, by being Jewish, by being not having the right background and being in the wrong place at the time. So, and I personally find this important because, like you said, it's part of our history, but I think it's also history that connects us. Again, I'm making the link to nowadays, to our times living and remembering how fast things can turn. And I think we musicians, I guess there are two ways of looking at what's your role as a musician, right? And I've never thought of myself as a political musician. But I think we do have the role of being ambassadors for something, right? And if through music we can make people aware of something and make them think about something else and maybe initiate new paths for them to walk in their life, maybe that's an additional aspect of who we are instead, in addition to offering like a beautiful time for an hour in the concert hall. So I think there's many different ways of what our role can be. And I think composers are our spokespeople maybe for that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a little bit of what I heard you say as well.
It is, and this music brings sad times and times of great hardship. And isn't it curious that we have all been through that similar experience in the last 6 months, not only here in Canada or North America, I mean the whole planet on a really global scale. And I think if we remember that people do persevere and there are brave people and people that bring that, and in music you can hear that. You can hear the passages of the great lament and you can hear the passages of bravery, and it's just, it involves the emotions as a good movie does, right? Some people go out of movies crying, sometimes it gives us a great motivation. Something is about the arts, about music, about great dance performance, about great movie. That just helps, that motivates and gives us inspiration. And I think sometimes we need that, and I don't feel like I'm giving that to the people. I'm touched by the music as much as the audience, and I think we are in it together. And at some point there is not such a divider between the performer and the audience. It's just in a great performance, everybody gets sort of affected.
Well, if you are having a story that affects you in whatever way, that kind of transpires to the audience as well, right? It's like you said, it's not a presentation in that sense. It's, as musicians, we use the music to share all the emotions that are out on the planet through the composers, and we're the transmitters to the audience to share their part of it, right? Yeah. And you're right. I mean, these days, the last 6 months certainly have had everybody have their own, I guess, roller coasters probably, and reevaluation of what's important. And I think many of us, not just as musicians, I kept hearing this from non-musicians quite a bit, how much they have been missing music in their life and the arts in their life. So that's why we are here today. Thank you so much, Katerina, for joining into this experiment, I guess, that we're all doing for the first time here. Join us tomorrow for another segment of the Magisterra Soloists fundraiser, which will show you a little documentary that Solaire Studios has produced as part of our generous grant that we received from the Shark organization. And I'm not going to give more away, so tune in tomorrow and see what that grant was all about.